Hey, seventh grade, happy June. Welcome to your last week of remote learning for seventh grade. So, this week, you want to make sure that you stay on top. Like every day, just the lessons are usually about 30 to 45 minutes long. We try not to overwhelm you. So, make sure that every day you put the work in so you don't feel really far behind because next week is a catch up week. So, we'll be giving you a list of all of the assignments that you're missing. And next week, you will work to catch up on those assignments. If you don't have anything to catch up on because you've stayed on top of all of your assignments, then you're pretty much done with next week and you're starting your summer vacation. If you have a few assignments or maybe a lot of assignments that you haven't completed yet, plan on doing some makeup work starting next week. Well, let's look at today's assignment. So last week and the week before, we were studying in depth all types of informational text. How can writers present information in different formats? And we compared and contrasted those different formats. We looked at the pros and cons of those formats. This week, you are going to be the authors. Now, if we were in a regular classroom and we had more time, you would be choosing one of those options to use as a format. But because we are limited on time and resources that you have at home, or that you don't have at home that we have in the classroom, we are going to remember I talked about this book right here, Enough, and how I love the book and it has a really important message, but it was a bit problematic because there were no First Nations protesters in here. So we're going to change that and we are going to create our own picture book with First Nations protesters. So your assignments today, the learning targets that we are going to focus on are these two right here. So these are our last two learning targets for the year. I can introduce a topic clearly for an informative text, previewing what is to follow. That will be in your thesis statement. But this one right here is the one we are really going to focus on. And this one, I can develop a topic with relevant facts, definitions, concrete details, and quotations or other information and examples in an informative text. That wasn't easy to read. So this is what we are going to start to work on today. And after watching today's video lesson, make sure you do that first, you are going to conduct some research and you are going to read articles, blog posts, or any available materials on the First Nations protester of your choice. Make sure your sources are credible. We practiced this when we were back in our regular classrooms and you looked at finding sources that were credible and you were very good at that. So make sure you continue at that practice as well. So once you do some research, you are going to jot down notes, which include facts, definitions, details, quotations, and other important information, all the things we talked about in this learning target. So let's take a look at your choices first. So the first thing that you need to do is, this is a very incomplete list of some First Nation protesters that will be easy to do research on, that you'll be able to find a lot of information just using your Chromebook. Ada Deer, she's been to our school. She's Menominee. Winona LaDuke, she came last year. She's Ojibwe. And many of these you've been working on in social studies. Dennis Banks, Russell Means, Clyde Bellacourt, John Trudell, all from AIM. LaDonna Bravebull Allard, I love her name so much, from No Dapple. Dallas Goldtooth, also another awesome name. The ICS students who were instrumental in making Indigenous Peoples Day a reality here in Milwaukee and later in Wisconsin. Or if you know of a First Nations protester who changed the United States, you can feel free to add them to this list as well. So the first thing that you're going to do is decide, who on this list seems interesting? And we'll be following this format in our writing this week. First, we're going to start with generating and collecting ideas. Then we'll move to drafting. We'll do some revising and some editing and some publishing. So right here, we're working on this today, generating and collecting ideas. So to collect and generate some ideas, you have to start with your research. Who sounds interesting to me? And when I was looking at the list, I really liked LaDonna Bravebull Allard's name. And this is something that I lived through. I'm really familiar with it. So this seemed interesting to me. And then John Trudell, if you, in our classroom, we have a picture of him. Bunky Echohawk, the artist who has visited ICS a few different times, had a picture, and I have his picture hanging in our classroom. Bunky Echohawk painted a picture, and the painting of John Trudell that Bunky Echohawk did, we have hanging in the classroom, and I'll show you what that looks like in just a moment. But I feel like because I have his painting hanging in our classroom, that I should definitely know a little bit more about him. I knew he was instrumental in AIM, but I wasn't exactly sure of his whole story. So I picked him. I did a little bit of research on all of these, just kind of browsed through the internet and picked a topic that seemed super interesting. And that's what I want you to do first. So I picked John Trudell. And your next, once you pick your protester, whoops, that's not what I'm looking for. This is what I want. Once you pick your protester, I just needed to scroll up. Then you need to do some research and reading blogs, blog posts, or any available materials to you. And then you're going to jot down some notes. So the first place I went, of course, was Google. And I found this website. It was johntrudell.com. I did my work, and it seems like a really credible source. So I looked at there's a 12-minute video about his history and his family. So that's the first thing I did, was watch that. And then the second thing that I did is I read the biographical information that this website included. And as I read, this is your next step in the lesson, I jotted down notes which include facts, definitions, details, quotations, and other information. So you can see that here in my notebook. I just wrote John Trudell's name right at the center. And I'll show you this. You can decide where you want to take your notes. Are you the type of writer like Mrs. Ash that likes to write in your notebook? Or are you the type of writer that prefers to use your Chromebook and take your notes digitally? Either method is fine. So you're going to want to take some notes. And this is what Mrs. Ash's notes look like right here. So I just took a picture of my notebook page and included on this presentation. So just like that learning target said, I jotted down some quotations, I jotted down facts, interesting information, and I did a little color coding here. So any information I got from the video, I color coded that and I jotted it down in blue. And any information I got from the website, where it has the biographical information, I jotted that down in green. So that is your assignment for today. Let me just scroll back up at the top to make sure we hit everything. So first, decide which protester is most interesting to you, that you would like to research. Then, second part, do your research. And while you're doing your research, jot down some notes. This step is going to be, if you do this step well, the next steps are going to be so much easier. Please email me if you have any questions about any of today's assignment, and I will see you tomorrow.